Duelist Nexus week number 1. Hey guys, this is Tom Box, and today we're going to be looking at main deck techs, side deck techs, and hand traps that you guys can be experimenting with in the week 1 of Duelist Nexus. Now note that the format's not completely changed yet. We're still in the June 2023 format, but with the main core set dropping like this, which does introduce a couple of new popular cards and boosting some of the existing archetypes, we're definitely going to see a little bit of a shift, even if it's not a big one. But we can also use this to kind of speculate to seeing which deck will probably have the better longevity when it comes to post-ban list once we get, into mid-August, and that's when we start to speculate those things. But today, we're here to help you get your invite for 2024, because we do have a remote duel Extravaganza event coming up this weekend, and that's basically going to shape and sculpt the landscape of what the meta is going to look like for the beginning of the format, but it'll also give us insight to the post-ban list format of which decks are going to be good, which ones are the better investment, and we can definitely see which hand traps and main deck techs are worth playing. So to preface this video, we're going to be looking at some of the top key performers that we know that are going to be good, and we're going to mix in some of the most popular picks into creating today's Venn diagram of hand traps techs that we're going to be talking about. So make sure you guys hit that like button, hit subscribe, ding that notification bell, and let's go. For the decks that we're going to be comparing in today's options, we're going to look at the top performers, which will make up most of the list, and then we'll look at the couple of sprinkled in popular picks, because popular picks are very insightful on seeing how well they do. If they do well in this current format, you can just imagine that they're just going to be even better post-ban list, because they're more or less ban list immune. Anyways, let's go over the top performers. Cash tier, the top performer, you already know that, no need to explain it. We have Pirelli. They gain Noir, which is why they're really crazy. They're really good at board breaking. They have new option of board breaking through the Pirelli Noir, or they can go happiness combo, just like crush a board, gain infinite pluses. It's really, really good. And then there's Labyrinth as one of the best trap matchups in the current format. It is what it is. It's one of the better ones for sure. And then there is the more aggressive decks like Dragon Links and Branded. Dragon Link being able to go to the Dissipator and just play and combo you and just make you grind through the rebranded. It's one of the tougher times, and they can survive a lot of hand traps. So they can play hand traps themselves, and they have good graveyard control. Then there's the less popular option in North America. I'm not saying it's a bad deck or anything. It's Rika. Rika in NA is not as popular because people just love to go wombo combo over here. I know it's also a combo deck, but I just don't see why it is less popular here. And this is just based off of the statistics and the data that I had access to from behind the commentary desk. And besides, this is a remote duel Extravaganza for NA, so base it off of that. I don't think Rika is going to be as popular. And then in terms of like new decks, well, this is not technically a new deck. Vanadium is going to get a lot more popular because they also have the synchron options and synchrons themselves. I wonder if we're going to see some ABC synchrons, or we're going to see some runic adventure synchron. These are some of the options that are currently being hyped up the most. And finally, we have another control deck. We have Rescue Aces. Rescue Aces, I don't know if they're going to make too big of a splash initially, but they are probably the fan favorite to move forward into becoming a tier 1 deck, maybe post-ban list. But these are the decks that we're going to be comparing. So let's start off by looking into some hand traps. So for hand traps, there's 4 that I want to talk about in this video, from my favorite to some of the ones that maybe aren't going to be as useful based off of the context of the decks I mentioned. Now, I know there's going to be a whole slew of other decks. So number 1 is going to be Ash. Number 2 is going to be Drone Lockbird. Number 3 is going to be Nibiru. Number 4 is going to be Infinite Imperm. Why is Imperm so low? Wasn't it such a good card? Well, we'll get into that. So first of all, Ash is just a well-rounded all-rounder, can hit basically every single matchup, regardless of how effective it is, but at the very least it hits branded and stops branded fusion to some degree, unless they have fusion duplication. Just putting that out there. But for the most part, there are key vital targets you can hit on each of the matchups where you won't recur a punishment unless they play triple tag. Anyways, let's move on to the next one. Nibiru. Is Nibiru actually worth running? That's a very good question, because with the new addition of the Synchron Monster Revolution Synchron, people are getting access to cards like Crystal Wing Synchro Dragon, which now will prevent you from activating that Nibiru without it getting negated and destroyed, which is a fair assessment. But let's take a look at what Nibiru can't hit, and then we'll talk about the stuff it can hit. It can't hit Pearly. Pearly doesn't summon enough normally unless you really stop them. Only when they go second, they have to commit into more monsters, because a lot of their cards aren't once per turn, and they're going to keep on trying to put more and more of them out, so that when they overlay, finally, maybe you can find one particular opportunity to punish them, which is fair. I think that's fair game. Then there is Labyrinth, which is pretty useless because they don't really summon that much, so we can move on. Then there are decks like Branded. Occasionally they just open really small because they want to try to lock you out, whatever. Those particular instances, sure, it won't work, but in most cases, I think you're able to hit them with Nibiru. Sure, they might be a Mirror Jade on the field, but the point of hitting them with a Nib is to simplify the game so that you don't have to eat so many cards on, but you don't have to respond to so many cards on the field. And then maybe one Feather Duster can clear out the rest of it, okay? And then there's the Synchron cards. Here's a funny one, because like they're going into Ancient Fairy into Crystal Wing, and that can be before the 5th summon, which makes Nibiru more or less useless. But in other cases, I still think it's worth it. And even against Rescue Ace, if they need to commit into Proxy F Magician, they go into that particular line, they're nibbable. And because they're nibbable, they might not even be able to get the chance to resolve the Turbulence. They might activate Turbulence Special Summon, and then you nib them at that particular point. Which, you know, at that point, you might want to hit them with an Imperm instead. But that's just like some of the options out there. And luckily for us, we don't have Sprite Elf to prevent the targeting. So that's they're going to have to play a gamble of whether or not there's nib or there is Imperm. But sometimes they just do it early because they don't have a choice. They just go Turbulence, and then you have a nib. Well, I guess you still have to eat the 4 back row. So that's kind of the position where I think nib is kind of 50-50. I still think it's worth hitting because you can hit stuff like Vanadium combo. You can hit Kashtira going full combo on you. Dragonling combo, Rika combo, and a little bit maybe on the Synchro combo if, you know, they committed an additional summon along the way. These are some of the options. Then there's Drone Lockbird. I think Drone Lockbird is a really good card this current format. I mean, there's Kashtira. If you can land it on their Pot of Prosperity, you get Wraith Soth, you're good to go. Then there is Pearly. They add a ton of cards. Rika adds a ton of cards. Dragonlink add a ton of cards. Vanadium, they add a ton of cards. Field Spell, from Field Spell to Monster to Field Spell, they're just adding a ton of cards. Rescue Ace, you can actually hit them as well. It's not the strongest card because even under the Droll, they can still go into Turbulence into setting 4 back, you still have to eat that particular play. Not the most fun play to eat, but still, you might prevent them from getting the access to the alert. And if you actually hit them early on the Droll, that means Hydrant doesn't get to add the monster. Or in the maybe Airlifter can't add the spell because they used, you know, an additional way to search a card. So there's a lot of things that could go wrong with the Rescue Ace line. And Branded, if they go like Draw Phase, activate Branded Opening, you're not going to be able to stop them anyway. So like there's not too much to say about that particular line there. As for the position of Imperm, this is kind of a neater one because it's going to find uses in every single deck, but is it actually enough? Or would you prefer to actually have a bigger blowout card? Against Kashtira, you can hit their Arise Harp, sure, but they could also have Forbidden Lance. Boom. And if you depended on it, then it doesn't work. You need to be able to kind of win in that chain, otherwise it's not worth playing. And that's kind of the key factor here. Next, Pirelli. I think they're able to dodge it because they have the trap cards, they can stack stuff on top, and I mean, if you're trying to hit Per Lily, I think it's worth it, but if you're trying to hit just Pearly, it's kind of iffy because they're not once per turn. They're just going to keep on generating more and more and more of them. It honestly could just be a solid waste. Labyrinth, they can dodge it. Big Welcome Labyrinth is just going to ruin that card for you. It's just going to miss your target, and there's no target. It can't resolve. Dragonlink, you're turning off more or less one card. You can turn off maybe a Dissipator, but some people don't really put Dissipator on the field, or if they play Branded Beast, they get rid of it and then they just revive it again. They have ways to kind of work around these cards. Rika, they are layered in terms of their disruption from back row, graveyard. It's not really enough. Branded, again, they have like Branded and Red, other branded spells to kind of help mitigate that particular negation. Vanadium, you're trading 1 for 1 at best. Synchron, this one kind of the same deal. Rescue Ace, I don't think it's that great either, unless you're hitting a Turbulence on turn 1 only. After that is not that great. So for the text for the side deck or the main deck, some way to break the board, here's some of my personal choices right now. One is a tribute based remove. Moving into the format, number one, Pearly, if they get into an X Pearly Noir with that many material, and they can do it with a 2-card combo now and get a triple card draw, this is one of your options to clear it. But again, know your matchup. Clear it like the back row first before you decide to answer that X Pearly Noir, because yeah, they're going to get the draws for free, sure, but at least I'm not going to give them an additional 3 cards and the additional body because I didn't clear the field spell and the back row. There's something to answer to, which is why, you know, back row move was so important. And then against Kashtira, you can kill a Rise Hard, kill Shangri-Ira. These are some of your options. Vanadium, you're doing this to kind of clear up some of their Omni negates. And then you have to have a follow-up, because if they get to the full board, you're kind of donezo. Then there's Rescue Ace. Is it worth playing? Yes, it is. You have to understand how some of their trap cards work, especially Contain and Extinguish. They need to control Rescue Ace monster to use those. Only the spell cards do not require anything, and because of that, you can say if you have Lava Golem and they have 3 monsters, they have Preventer to act as a Book of Moon, and they have the Hydrant plus the Turbulence. Get rid of the Turbulence, and the Hydrant and the Preventer will just turn itself off. Preventer and the trap cards require another Rescue Ace. Well, they require Rescue Aces on the field to activate. So that's a very, very key important note there. And kind of similarly, this is not a matchup we talked about, but against Exorcister, if you decide to Kaiju them on their big sister, the Exorcister Magnifica, then they lose all the body. But in case they did tag out, whatever, just throw the body on one of the monsters anyway, just so that you don't have to answer to Returnia. As Returnia, a lot of people don't know this. If all monsters you control are Exorcisters, then you can pay 800 life points to activate this card. So in other words, if they control something that's not Exorcister, they get screwed over. Rika, you should remove the Rika name on the field, so it also turns off the princess, so it becomes a little bit of a 2-for-1 interaction trade. Synchron, you're trading for negate. And so at the very worst, a tribute-based removal is a permanent imperm, and if you can get 2-for-1 with Lava Golem for a deck that does not require normal summoning, then try Lava Golem. But I think the Kaiju itself is already really, really good. So other cards, are we main decking or side decking? Number one, I would say Triple Tactics Thrust. I think thrusting into certain cards, so many monster-based interaction. A Rise Heart, mandatory. Pearly, if they activate something, you're going to get something regardless, and I think it's just going to be very commonplace. Vanadium Endboard, if they negate one of your cards, you get to punish them pretty hard, so try to force the Omni negate or the Spell negate to kind of get your way. Rescue Ace, this is kind of the weird one because it's only Preventer that's really going to be the one that kind of forces it out, but they do run a ton of hand traps through their own monsters, so you can also bait that out the same way. And that deck also lacks protection, so they need their back rows to go through to answer monsters. That deck's not really good against dealing with spells and traps, so that's kind of your benefit. And I guess a lot of the other decks, Exorcister, every single one, they all have options here where, you know, people can get pretty hard punished if, you know, the correct spell cards. And so what are you thrusting into? Well, Talents can give you the additional draw, which is kind of nice, but I think everyone should be main decking Feather Duster. There's 2 back row matches that we both do not like. One is going to be Rescue Ace, when you have to eat all those back rows that they basically traded for free and they're going to cycle against you. That's probably one way of kind of clearing it out and opening for a chance to kind of regain control, regain the tempo, put yourself in a better position against your opponent so that, you know, their stuff doesn't really matter anymore. And Duster not only does that, but also clears out a lot of the problematic cards. Number one, it can clear out a lot of the Pearly stuff. You can clear out the field spell, you know, Starry Street, and you can take out, you know, My Friend Pearly. Against Cashier, you take out the Birth and whatever the stuff that they leave on the field, because you can never leave a Birth on the field. Against Exorcister, it's pretty good. You can take out Vadis and you take out Returnia ahead of time, which makes it, you know, much better in your cases. Against Riga, take out the Con. Against Synchron, I don't know what they're playing. Depends on the deck, really. But at the very least, you're clearing up your opponent's follow-up, which is coming in the form of a spell and trap. Dragon Link, take out the Bestial Regain, and you take out, if they have Beast, take out the Beast too. So that's why Duster itself has just so much more value in this case. I mean, some people can opt to play like Cosmic Cyclone. Like, I would say if you're playing Gold Pride, play Cosmic Cyclone instead. Then there's also Dark Ruler. You can just use it to mass clear boards. And I think maybe the evenly matches can come back into the main deck. We've already seen those decks that main deck it, but it's a hard punish if you don't want the new deck, you know, Rescue Ace to take off, which I don't think that should be your priority. You could use evenly matched to take out all those back row, and they can't get it back because they're banished face down. It's gone for good. They're going to be playing more or less access code, try to OTK you at this point. But you guys, let me know down in the comment section, what are cards that you are trying out? Which decks do you think are going to perform very, very well in this upcoming format? And which deck do you think will survive the upcoming ban list? We'll see. I guess that's going to really depend on the remote duel extravaganza to kind of, get us a starting point to see where this format's going to shape up. Well, let me know down in the comment section if you guys enjoyed this video, kind of gave you a little head start, or maybe help you kind of break some of your decisions that you were kind of, debating on. Well, hit that thumbs up button for me, hit the subscribe button, ding that notification bell. And well, that's all I got for this video. So if you guys enjoyed it, well, thank you, subscribe, and I'll see you all in the next one.